Hi everyone, welcome back to Scripture Study with Smithy. Today I wanted to touch on Matthew chapter 16, 1 to 12, where the Scribes and the Pharisees come tempting the Lord, and he has a few things to say. He says in verse 1, the Pharisees also with the Sadducees came, and tempting desired him that he would show them a sign from heaven. He answered and said unto them, when it is evening, ye say, it will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning it will be foul weather today, for the sky is red and lowering. O ye hypocrites, ye can discern the face of the sky, but can ye not discern the signs of the times? A wicked and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, and there shall no sign be given unto it, but the sign of the prophet Jonas. And he left them and departed. And when his disciples were come to the other side, they had forgotten to take bread. Then Jesus said unto them, take heed and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And they reasoned among themselves, saying, it is because we have taken no bread. Which when Jesus perceived, he said unto them, O ye of little faith, why reason ye among yourselves, because ye have brought no bread? Do ye not understand? Neither remember the 5 loaves of the 5,000, and how many baskets ye took up? Neither the 7 loaves of the 4,000, and how many baskets ye took up? How is it that ye do not understand that I spake it not to you concerning bread, that ye should beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the Sadducees? Then understood they how that he bade them not beware of the leaven of bread, but of the doctrine of the Pharisees and of the Sadducees. So a couple of interesting things there. Let's start off with the first section, which is from verse 1 to 4. The Lord's talking about the Pharisees and Sadducees and how they came to him looking for a sign from heaven. And he answered them saying, had the red sky at night, the red sky in the morning, and what that kind of means. I don't know if anyone had known that before, but I use that all the time. It's a red sky in the morning. I know to make sure I take my jacket with me. But he said something in verse 4, which is interesting, of verse 3 and 4. So you cannot discern the signs of the times. What was the sign of the times? The sign was that Jesus was coming and he was fulfilling the prophecies that they should have already known, because they were Scribes and Pharisees. They knew the scriptures, right? And they were rejecting it. But verse 4, it says, a wicked and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, and there shall no sign be given it but the sign of the prophet Jonas. Okay, that's interesting in itself, right? So those who seek for a sign are usually sinful people who are looking for an excuse not to believe, right? They don't want to acknowledge their faults and their weaknesses and have to change. So he's saying no sign is going to be given to you but the sign of Jonas. Well, what was the sign of Jonas? Let's go to Luke chapter 11. And in 29 and 32, it says, 29 to 32, it says, when the people were gathered thick together, he began to say, this is an evil generation. They seek a sign, and there shall no sign be given it but the sign of Jonas the prophet. For as Jonas was a sign unto the Ninevites, so shall also the Son of Man be to this generation. The queen of the south, which is the queen of Sheba, who came to see Solomon, shall rise up in the judgment with the men of this generation and condemn them. For she came from the utmost parts of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon, and behold, a greater than Solomon is here. The men of Nineveh shall rise up in the judgment with this generation and shall condemn it, for they repented at the preaching of Jonas, and behold, a greater than Jonas is here. Something to think about, right? So the Lord is way greater than Jonah, and they were rejecting him. and that that generation was going to be judged by those people who had repented in previous generations. That was quite interesting. So that was one aspect of it, was to beware of the doctrine of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Why? Because they were rejecting the prophecies and they were leading people astray, right? To hold themselves up as lights to the nation, but there's other scriptures that say that they were like tombs with whited walls, like there's no substance in them, right? They're empty vessels. They're offering nothing for people. Okay, and the next thing that he talked about was, don't you remember the 5 loaves? Don't you remember the 5,000 that were fed and the 4,000 that were fed? So let's just look at John chapter 6. I really like John's version of the 5 loaves and 2 fishes. From chapter 6, 1 to 14, he says, after these things, Jesus went over the Sea of Galilee, which is the Sea of Tiberias. And a great multitude followed him, because they saw his miracles which he did on them that were diseased. And Jesus went up into the mountain, and there he sat with his disciples. And the Passover, a feast of the Jews, was nigh. And Jesus then lifted up his eyes, and saw a great company come unto him. He saith unto Philip, whence shall we buy bread, that these may eat? And this he said to prove him, for he himself knew what he would do. Philip answered him, 200 pennyworth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may take a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, saith unto him, there is a lad here, which hath 5 barley loaves and 2 small fishes. But what are they among so many? And Jesus said, make the men sit down. Now there was much grass in the place, so the men sat down, in number about 5,000. So there's 5,000 men. There's also women and children. So you could probably double, almost triple that number. And Jesus took the loaves, and when they had given thanks, he distributed to the disciples, and the disciples to them that were set down, and likewise of the fishes, as much as they would. When they were filled, he said unto his disciples, gather up the fragments that remain, that nothing be lost. Therefore they gathered them together, and filled 12 baskets with the fragments of the 5 barley loaves, which remained over and above unto them that had eaten. Then those men, when they had seen the miracle that Jesus did, said, this is of a truth that prophet that should come into the world. So there's a great version of the 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Interesting that there was only one young lad who actually had some food with him. The others thought they would just have to go away and buy some food. Always be prepared, always take something with you, especially when you're going out into the wilderness. Yeah, but there you go. There's the power of the Lord in being able to provide physical sustenance from very little to so many. There was a Matthew chapter 14, I think it was, yeah. And in Matthew's version, it said they into a desert place. They were in a desert place, but there was a bit of grass where they were at the time, so they were all sitting down on it. But he said that, so verse 19, and he commanded the multitude to sit down on the grass, and took the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, and looking up to heaven, he blessed and brake, and gave the loaves to his disciples, and the disciples to the multitude. So he looked up to heaven and blessed it, and broke the bread. Fantastic. Now the 7 loaves is interesting as well. That's found in Matthew chapter 15, 32 to 39. And Jesus called his disciples unto him and said, I have compassion on the multitude, because they continue with me now 3 days, and have nothing to eat. And I will not send them away fasting, lest they faint in the way. And his disciples say unto him, Whence shall we have so much bread in the wilderness, as to fill so great a multitude? And Jesus saith unto him, How many loaves have ye? And they said, 7, and a few little fishes. And he commanded the multitude to sit down on the ground. And he took the 7 loaves and the fishes, and gave thanks, and brake them, and gave to his disciples, and the disciples to the multitude. And they did all eat, and were filled. And they took up the broken meat that was left, 7 baskets full. And they that did eat were 4,000 men, beside women and children. And he sent away the multitude, and took ship, and came into the coasts of Magdala. So there we go. So he did it a couple of times, breaking bread and blessing it and giving it to the multitudes, because he had compassion on them. Yes. What else was I going to say? And it also says in verse 38 that there's 4,000 men, beside women and children, so you could take that the same as with the 5,000 in the other story. There's also men and women and children with them. So yeah, interesting that the Lord has compassion. They were 3 days fasting in the wilderness, hearing him preach, watching him do miracles and bless and help people, and then he performs a miracle like that. What a wonderful thing that would have been to see, and that would have been very faith promoting. I guess that's why in the previous scripture we just read that of a truth, this is the prophet that should come. Anyway, thanks for watching. Enjoy your study.